Hey guys, what is up? My name is Jess and today we're going to be doing a story time. So today is going to be a story about how I fainted during graduation. And it wasn't an actual graduation ceremony, it was actually the ceremony before that, which apparently is called a baccalaureate ceremony. And I went to a Christian school and I would always have to go to chapel about 3 times a week. So by the time I graduated, I was so done with going to chapel that I wasn't planning on going to the baccalaureate. I was just gonna go to the graduation. But my parents had the speaker that they were really excited to hear, and he was like a really famous apologetic apostle. He was a famous person and they were so excited to hear him, so I had no choice and I had to go. Before I talk about that a little bit, I'm kind of going to give you like a backstory about why I faint all the time. So it all started when I was 9 and my sister had a horrible bloody nose, and I walked into the bathroom and I just saw it. I can't even talk about it. I saw it, okay? I saw it. I remember being like, whoa, that's disgusting. And I walked out of the bathroom. My parents were helping her, so they were in the bathroom with her. And it was just me by my lonesome. And I was like, wow, I feel weird. And I've never fainted before, so I didn't know the feeling. But I apparently just like dropped dead on the ground. My parents came out of the bathroom, didn't know what happened. They thought I just fell and hit my head, which is actually very, very scary. But they didn't know that I fainted. All I remember is waking up to my dad giving me CPR. My mom apparently jumped the fence and like ran to my neighbor's house to have them call 911. Because back in the day, since I'm so old, when you had the internet on, you couldn't use the phone at the same time. My mom jumped over the fence. My sister jumped over another fence. My dad was giving me CPR. All my neighbors were running into the house like, oh my God, are you okay? Like ambulance was called. This whole shebang. It was humiliating. So I found out I was afraid of blood that day, and also I think the trauma from that whole day and how it went down with the ambulance and the neighbors and the CPR and the hospital and the scans and the MRIs and all this stuff, I think it gave me like almost some sort of PTSD. So from then on, I was just terrified of blood and anything medical, and I would just faint all the time. Basically, I passed out a few more times throughout my life. A few times in science class, one time at the beach, another time at the doctor's. Fun times. So, of course, I would choose a time where everyone was there. And I was at my baccalaureate and the speaker was talking. He was a really famous whatever. He was talking about how he had a friend who was a doctor, and that doctor was working on a person who had just gotten into a bad accident, and he refused to let her die.
And as I was washing up, the nurse came and she said, "Doctor, you better come and take a look at this." This was her bag, and they emptied it out. It was all full of drug paraphernalia, needles used and all that kind of stuff. And he knew she was a drug junkie and had been caught in some kind of a messed up ring. But as he was looking at it, he was wiping his hand, and one finger felt a bit tender, and he noticed he'd nicked his finger when he put his hand into the rib cage. He said, "I'm calling to tell you I may be in trouble." As a young father, he said, "I think I've just contacted diseased blood."
And the speaker said, "Are you telling me one tiny prick can take over your whole entire immune system?" And the doctor says it just takes one prick. And I remember thinking, I've probably pricked myself in my life. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm dying. And I remember being like, don't do it, Jess, don't faint. And I'm sitting there like breathing heavy. And then the first sign for me personally when I faint is I feel it going up my throat, like this really warm feeling. And I was like, oh no. And then things started like blacking out. And I was like, I'm gonna faint in front of my entire graduating class and their family and their extended family. And I remember looking over to this girl next to me. She didn't really like me. She wasn't a fan of me. That's another story. And I was like, I'm gonna faint. And she looks at me and she goes, no. And I'm like, is that it? So then I went to the person to the right of her and I'm like, hi, excuse me, like I'm gonna faint. And she was like, no. And she was like, take off your hat, like your cap, and fan yourself. And I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. So I'm taking it off and I'm fanning myself and I'm like, nope, not working. And they're like, lay down in the pew. So I lay down in the pew. No one cares. No one bats an eye. The speaker keeps on going. My parents are completely oblivious to this whole thing. I'm laying down in the pews, and I remember by the end of it, I somehow made it to the end, and I walked out, and my sister was like, wow, that really triggered me. And I'm like, dude, I fainted. She died laughing because she knows like that's like who I am as a person. My parents were like, oh, I had no idea. Like, what did you faint about? What was so scary? And I'm like, are you kidding me? He talked about how you prick your finger and you die. Like, anyways, that's my story of when I fainted at my baccalaureate. My poor parents spent so much money for me to go to the school, and I'm just such an embarrassment. But then afterwards, we went to Outback Steakhouse, and I got a giant sangria, and I got super drunk on the sangria. I was like starting to become like an angry drunk, and I was like, no one in this family gave a hoot that I fainted. Anyways, that's my story of how I fainted during my graduation, and it was quite the week. And then after that whole week, I had major OCD about getting some sort of blood disease from pricking my finger or scratching myself or getting a tattoo. Like, everything just triggered the heck out of me, and that is a story for another day. OCD is no joke, my friends. So thank you for listening to my story time. I hope that kind of made sense. I know I'm very scatterbrained, but hopefully you're able to follow along, and I will see you next time.